What's going on? Hey, Jason, man. Ah, we're gonna watch some Michigan gun control again. This is a hearing I didn't. This happened on the 9th, so I didn't see this one until today. Looking up some other stuff, so heh, all the nice fun insanity that you can expect from any other gun control hearing. So we're gonna play around and we're gonna watch some of this because apparently I just love torturing myself. So I'll share it with you guys. Oh, give it a minute or two. We'll see who all shows up. A couple of shows should have just ended a second or two ago. And I'm normally watching, but I just got in. Yeah. Bunch of nasty crew. There's Tactical Fud. What's up, Fud? Fud, where are you at again, man? You're not up in Michigan, are you? I can't remember. I know, man, so many cool people from so many places around the country, man. I can't keep up with everybody. But we're gonna watch a little bit more Michigan gun control. We're gonna spread the word for 280U and try to get the word out a little bit more. Arkansas, that's it. Yeah, you're like about like Alabama right now. You guys are doing pretty cool on the whole gun control front. In fact, hell, I should have my aunt coming in from Arkansas sometime next week. I think. At least I think it's next. It's gonna be next week or the week after. Uh, Got to weasel my way into some damn duck and goose hunting in Arkansas, where my family's from. Because God damn knows they got them things real quick. I thought there was going to be another hearing in Washington State. I was looking up, but I couldn't find anything that was new from them. But I found this one from Michigan, and this one happened, like I said, on the 9th. But I didn't catch this one when it first came out. But this one, I listened to some of it today, just bouncing through, and it's freaking retarded. I mean, yeah, tactical foot in Arkansas, man. I've never seen so many ducks and so many geese in one freaking spot. As in where some of my family's at around Breakley and Wheatley and all that, and it's all rice field and shit out there, and just millions of birds in the air. It's freaking amazing. What's up, brother 500? So this is another unplanned one. We're just I saw this and figured we'd watch it because part of it is even though these things aren't happening in some other states, like Alabama's cool. I didn't see anything looking through Alabama's legislature as far as this gun control shit being pushed, but this is a national push. Moms Demand Action, freaking Brady Group, they're all writing this legislation and they're pushing it in just about every state. State Washington gun law says true. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's going to be a little bit longer before it hits the Senate then. Well, I ain't got no hope they're going to stop it before it hits the Senate up there. It's just crazy. And we're about to hear a bunch of craziness with this one. Matter of fact, let me make sure I got this in the right freaking spot because I want to. Yeah. Hold on, I got to back this up a little bit. Yeah, let me throw on some phonage and we'll kick this one off. Might as well start the insanity.
and a lot of emotion on this issue. Do want to make sure that folks do not have outbursts during the committee hearing and just really respect the range of opinions in the room. And lastly, just a note on the substitutes that we are about to adopt. Over the past weeks, month, I don't know, a long time, we've been working with a number of stakeholders to incorporate really helpful feedback from a number of you in this room and those of you watching. So just want to note that we are continuing conversations, want to continue receiving more feedback, want to continue conversations to make sure that the bills that we pass in the Senate are the strongest and are most able to be implemented in the way that we intend. So we're going to continue those conversations and just want folks to know that the substitutes we adopt today, we fully expect that there will be additional changes and we will continue to improve the bill. All right, with that, I will entertain, we're going to go through adoption of substitutes to the bills, and then we will go to testimony. First is Senate Bill 76. I'll entertain a motion to amendment number 1 to Senate Bill 76.
Madam Chair, on the motion to adopt the S1 version of Senate Bill 70, version of Senate Bill
82,
because those
order bill as amendment.
Oh, that wasn't real important. Here we go.
Thank you for having me. I am the Wayne County prosecutor and have been for the last 17 years. Before that, I was on the bench, and before that, I was trying cases for 12 years. I want to.
Now, that's the scary thing. This lady was on the bench. So this lady was a judge.
I'm going to focus only today on the safe storage aspect, but we've been trying, and thank you, Senator Chang, we've been trying to get this done for 7 or 8 years now. But I want to highlight a case that I think really speaks to why we're here. On September 27th of 2019, 2 defendants, husband and wife, were operating an unlicensed daycare out of their home.
Yeah, dude.
The defendants had several firearms hidden, well, not hidden, but throughout the home. 2 of them were upstairs in a shared bedroom that their son, who was 3 years old, knew about because the father told him. And on the morning of the incident where children were shot in the house, several children ranging from an infant to 5 years old were in the home being supervised by the mother alone. The father had gone to work. 3 of the 8 children were upstairs in the house. They found guns, plural, and the evidence showed that they were playing with them actively. The defendant's son, who again was 3 years old, pulled the trigger and fired shots. One shot passed through one of the baby's arms and the other in the face of a child going in and out of his eye. All the children upstairs were 3 years old. The guns upstairs were loaded with one in the chamber, and the defendant wife was the only one in the home at the time. There was some dispute about whether she knew about the guns upstairs, but she certainly knew that there were lawful guns all throughout the home. Fortunately, both of these children survived, but the child that was shot in the face and eye has still lasting impacts. There's a lot more I can say, but there's a time crunch, so I'm not going to go through the whole procedural history, but I can tell you we had a hard time sustaining some of these only because we had a lack of things that we could charge. This case highlights the need for a new law because a child abuse second charge is what we charge in these cases, requires an act. And in this case, while they were arguing.
So understand her argument for this, these new laws, her argument so far isn't these are going to stop these things from happening. Her argument is we need stiffer charges after the act. So, okay.
Arguments that the defendant had committed the act. There was not enough evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, but there was no question that she knew the guns were in the home. I should also add that the father pled guilty right away. 39 is the magic number from me. That is a number of children and adolescents that have been shot and or killed in Wayne County because of unsafe storage practices, 1 a month. In the year of 2016, when we started working on this, we had 25 in 1 year.
Why does she mention children and adolescents there? Because the adolescents are the ones that are out there shooting at each other and gang banging. That's how they're getting killed. So it's not 30-something innocent children killed with firearms. It's a fucking lie.
Children that were either killed or seriously injured because of the unsafe storage. The allure of guns and children is strong. It's like a magnetic attraction for some reason. And no matter where the child is from, no matter their economic status, no matter their demographics, if a child finds and sees a weapon and has access to it, they're going to pick it up. They're going to play with it. They're going to point it, and they're going to shoot it. This is a fact. And we see these results every single day. This is not an academic exercise for us. We look into the eyes of these families who have lost their children and into these children who are quadriplegics, been shot through the eye, the leg, the head multiple times, and in the neck. This is what I'm talking about. And these are real case examples where guns were unsafely stored in a crib, on top of a Game Boy console, real case, under the bed, under a pillow, another real case, on the kitchen counter openly, a loaded, unlocked gun, in a mother's coat pocket, on a table, under the living room couch, in an unlocked glove box in a car where the child was left while the parent ran into the store, on an open shelf, on a nightstand that was low that a 3-year-old could reach it, in the bottom dresser drawer, that was the case I just told you about, behind a television, in the pocket of a sleeping man, on top of a dresser drawer, and I could go on and on and on. This is what we're talking about.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Do members have any questions?
I'm done already? Oh. Okay. A lot more to say. May I conclude?
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. Up next, we do have Dr. April Zioli and Dr. Patrick Carter from the University of Michigan Institute for Firearm Injury Prevention.
Hello, I'm here as a gun policy researcher who works for the Institute for Firearm Injury Prevention at the University of Michigan. And for the last 19 years of my life, I have been studying gun policy, including the laws we're talking about today. First, the Extreme Risk Protection Order Bill. These laws have evidence from Connecticut and Indiana, the states that have had these laws the longest, that suggest that extreme risk protection orders are associated with reductions in suicide. We also have good evidence that extreme risk protection orders are being used to disarm individuals who have threatened to shoot and kill at least 3 people, or mass shootings. In my 6-state study, we found that 10%, or 662, of the petitions filed were for mass shooting threats, and 20% of those were for K-12 school shooting threats. Many of these cases had individuals who, through their actions, demonstrated that they were quite serious about killing people. For example, there was a man who threatened to kill his family and had etched each of their names on a bullet. Having the option of an extreme risk protection order allows guns to be removed when someone is at imminent risk of harming themselves or others. Next, the Purchaser Licensing Universal Background Check Law.
What's up?
This law prevents the purchase of guns by individuals who have been legally disqualified from purchase, such as individuals convicted of a felony. Studies out of Missouri and Connecticut suggest that this purchaser licensing law reduces firearm homicide and firearm suicide rates. It also reduces fatal shootings of police officers. And states with this type of law also have significantly lower rates of mass shootings than.
Now, understand all the statistics she's throwing out there take nothing into account about changes in demographics, changes in economy, nothing like that. They take nothing else into account. And they still fudge the numbers on this stuff quite well, actually, to try to prove their point. And anytime they mention something that is peer-reviewed, understand, peer-reviewed just means that someone technically in your peer group looked at your research. If all the people in your peer group share the same bias for your research, they're just going to affirm your research. It doesn't mean peer review does not mean that it was critically reviewed anymore. If you don't believe me, you can look up a group that had peer-reviewed studies, papers published, peer-reviewed studies on subjects such as dog park rape. They took Mein Kampf and just changed a few words in it and made it sound like it was more social justice-y, and it was peer-reviewed and approved. So peer-review doesn't mean shit anymore with the clear bias that our educational institutes have these days. So almost anytime they jump in with peer-reviewed, you can automatically just throw that in the big-ass pile of bullshit that it belongs in. What's up, Vanessa Kitty? So when they start to mention this research, you can look at their numbers and you can if you read their papers, you have to go down to the footnotes and you can figure out where they pulled their numbers. Once you figure out where they pull their numbers, Then you can research their numbers and you'll find that it's absolute horseshit. That's the way you have to treat their stuff. You can read their initial paper, but get to their footnotes and then figure out where they pulled their information from. Then you can get to their clear bias on a lot of these things. And it's criminal in that our education systems have gone this far to where these things aren't critically reviewed anymore through a peer who's vetting your research. They're in your echo chamber is what it is. And that's, to me, that is very much criminal. And it's an awful damn state of affairs.
In states that don't have this type of law. Lastly, the Child Access Prevention Bill. These laws have more evidence supporting their association with reductions in childhood firearm fatalities than any other firearm law. They've been associated with reductions in childhood firearm suicide, childhood homicide, childhood unintentional firearm deaths, and childhood non-fatal gun assault injuries. These three policies would help to reduce Michigan's gun violence problem. And if these laws are enacted, we can evaluate them with rigorous science to determine whether and how these laws need to be adjusted
Sam, you're right.
to better fit
Complete
Michigan's
political
needs.
shit show.
Hi, I'm Patrick Carter. I'm an emergency physician. I'm also the director of the Institute for Firearm Injury Prevention at the University of Michigan. And I just want to add 2 points to what Dr. Zeoli said. One is that it's important to consider, as you consider policy solutions for this problem, that's not the only potential solution, that we have to think about that as a first step, and that
Krabby, what's up, brother man?
And require both programmatic and policy-oriented solutions, as you heard Dr. Zeoli talk about. And also that as these policies potentially are implemented, thinking about how they are implemented and the evaluation of those policies is critically important. And so thinking about the data infrastructure in Michigan, which is insufficient at present to do complete evaluations of the policies, as well as how we address the issue of firearm injury prevention throughout Michigan.
Thank you both very much. And I will note that in the substitute that we adopted, we did incorporate some language. Thank you for the suggestion around making sure that we are evaluating this policy and gathering that data. So we're grateful for that suggestion. Anna.
Actually, Chairwoman, I had a question for Prosecutor Worthy, if it's okay to have her come back up to the table prior to her.
Absolutely. Yep. While Dr. Zeoli and Dr. Carter are here, are there any questions for that? Oh, Senator Runstead, and then we'll go back to Prosecutor Worthy.
You know, excuse me, I've got some allergies going. You know, I just haven't had a ton of time, but just reviewing from Dr. Lott of the Crime Prevention Research Center that looked at the most recent data. They investigated the use of red flag laws on murder, suicide deaths due to multiple victim shootings. They use murder rather than firearm homicide, and suicide rather than firearm suicide, because there may be substitution, and homicide include justified homicide and homicides committed in line of duty by police officers. 4 of the states implemented this policy before the end of 2017, California in 2016, Connecticut 1999, Washington 2016. So looking at 36 years of data, they found red flag laws had no significant effect on murder, suicide, number of people killed in mass shootings, robbery, assault, burglary. There was some evidence that rates increase. It would indicate that these do not save lives. And one of the things I keep seeing over and over again is that there are more children killed in car accidents, or killed by guns in car accidents. When I've heard that for 3 hours in the last testimony, if you sort between 1 to 14, there's 66 times or 60 times more likely to be killed in a car accident. Here's how they cook the books. They're using 18 and 19-year-olds as children. Now you're getting into gang shootings. All kinds of gang shootings are classified as children in these very horrible situations that doesn't apply in this case. What I'm saying is there's a lot of statistics we're going to hear. Hopefully, we're going to hear from both sides to get a balance. Thank you.
Senator, did you have a question?
No, I don't.
Okay. Would you like to respond?
Sure. There's been multiple credible peer-reviewed research studies that have found that extremist protection order laws are associated with decreases in firearm suicide and suicide as a whole. If you remove the firearms, suicide goes down because firearms are an incredibly lethal way to attempt suicide. There are no credible peer-reviewed studies that have looked yet at extremist protection orders and homicide, though those studies are in the works, and hopefully in a couple of years I can tell you about their results. And I'll throw it to you for the
Yeah,
kids.
so that research you cited is mine. And kids under the age of 19 are more likely to die from a firearm than any other cause before they graduate high school. And those deaths are not all gang shootings. So
Never said they were, but you include 18 and 19-year-olds as children.
I
Okay,
do.
thank you.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Prosecutor Worthy would like to invite you to back up, and Senator Santana, go ahead with your question.
Thank you, Prosecutor Worthy, for coming back to the table. I just think that when you represent 43 cities, it's hard to unpack.
Here's something. All right, let's have a little bit of fun. I don't know whether you guys, I've never showed this before. Let's have a little bit of fun though. Let me do this. Let me do a present. We're going to do a screen share. Let me stop this one. We'll get back to that. I'm going to do a screen share. And we're going to go over to a CDC website. All right. So, get rid of a couple things. So this CDC website, let me handle something real quick. So this CDC website, you can go in here and you can compare different causes of death. You can filter them by age. You can filter them by age, sex, race, you name it. You can filter all of it. But look at this real quick. So I did unintentional firearms deaths versus unintentional poisonings. And I did this basically from ages 0 to 9. This is from across the United States. You see here that unintentional poisonings in the home and unintentional firearms deaths are the same, with the median age actually being younger for poisoning than for firearms. But you see these are almost identical. If you filter these all down by 9 years old and younger, you filter out typical kids, that younger people that would be involved in gang activity and shootings and things like that. So we can adjust this down. So their bullshit they're pushing about this leading cause of death, firearms, trying to push this for innocent children, is a bunch of horse shit. And it always has been. And the biggest lie of it is this years of potential life lost that they throw out here, which is based on purely speculation on average life expectancies of people and all that. And that's how they come up with this leading cause of death. Let's do something there. We can go back to, let's see. Let's reset the filter. Let's play around a little bit. Just have a little fun. Let's reset our filters. Or am I going to have to go all the way back out? Maybe I go all the way back out. Yeah, go all the way back out. So you guys can get this website. It's really easy. This WISQRAS or QRS, whatever the hell. Let's go into causes of death. So instead of unintentional poisoning, firearms, let's add another cause of death. Let's go do this. Let's do unintentional firearms mechanically. Is it going to be motor vehicle overall? Yeah, let's do motor vehicle overall. Let's add that cause of death in there. Comparison selections displayed. All right, let's hit this. Let's look at the data here. And remember, I left the ages the same and all that in here. So let's see what it pulls up. You're going to show me where. So vehicles overall, children under 9, number of deaths, and this is unintentional. So 535 comes out to 17,319. Actually, no, that's the firearms. So unintentional poisoning comes in at rank number 1. Sorry. So unintentional poisoning comes in at rank number 1 with 87,404 deaths. Unintentional motor vehicle overall comes down at 42,339. Unintentional firearm in this ranking is at number 3 with 535. Let's do something. Let's filter it around for some age ranges, though. Let's filter some data. That was from 0 to 4 to unknown. Let's see what happens when we bring it down to 5 to 9, though. This is going to change up some numbers, so we'll see what happens here. And this is just play around. I'm going to get back to the hearing. But if you ever want to dig down into some data, if you're kind of a freaking numbnuts like me, oh, looky here. So unintentional motor vehicle overall, rank number 1, 787 deaths, 86.23, accrued rate of 2, minimum or median age is 4. So if you take unintentional deaths from firearms, unintentional deaths, motor vehicles, unintentional deaths, poisoning, filter all those down from ages 4 to 9, unintentional motor vehicle accidents are way more often the death of innocent children than firearms. Boy, oh boy, oh boy, doesn't that throw a different spin on some shit? So whenever these people are running over this horse shit that they're pushing, you can go look at their own numbers and prove them wrong. So let's get back to, let me stop this one and then we'll get back to this screen share. I just wanted you guys to see that because that's where I go through and I do a bunch of research. I found that site. I can't remember how. It's just off of the main CDC site. And you got to filter through some shit to get to it. I tripped across it about a year or so ago. And was able to find that. So, hey, looky there. Redneck knows data, huh? Vanessa, to answer your question, in the state of Michigan, where they are trying to prosecute 2 parents for this, yes, they believe it's the parents' fault. Doesn't matter that this kid was old enough to know right from wrong. This kid was old enough to know that murdering his classmates was wrong. Do I believe the parents did some things that they could have done better? Yes, but they're parents. No parent wants to admit that their kid is having issues like that. Ultimately, is it the parent's fault when a kid pulls the trigger? No. Sorry, personal responsibility is a bitch. Done with homicide. Damn lie. Hell, take it easy, brother. Hope your back's feeling better too, man. What did I do? I lost my damn, hold on. I lost my screen share. How did I lose my screen share? Why didn't y'all tell me I lost my screen share? I'm just sitting here
Looking at
drinking
5
beer, looking like
states
an
that
idiot.
had passed these laws, there was a 6.4% reduction
Now I'm
in
back.
firearm suicide. Now, Senator Runstad correctly pointed out that a study by Dr. Lott
MC, back in the day,
had
I would rather
argued that
got
these
my
laws
ass
don't have
beat
an
by
effect.
my
But if you
dad.
look at the
My mom
actual
was the one
study,
who was gonna
what
kill
he
me.
found was that there was a 50% reduction in murder rates in states that implemented red flag laws. It didn't reach statistical significance because of the very low number of states that were
Tactical, what's
included
up, brother?
in the study. But there was a 50% reduction. And I also want to answer a question that Senator Johnson asked last week, an excellent question, which was if Illinois' law didn't work,
Yeah. Dude,
you know, why
tactical, you're
do we
right.
say red flag laws work if
Let me pause this for just a sec, because Tactical says something right there. Yeah. In that meeting with the issues that kid was having, he should have been sent home with the parents right then. Not allowed to go back to a classroom because he was exhibiting some pretty serious issues. You don't go throw him back in a classroom. But hey, you know, they're educators. Fucking numbnuts, every one of them.
Illinois' law didn't have any effect? And the answer is that from 2020 to 2021, if you compare Illinois with Florida, in Florida there were 4,895 extreme risk protection orders issued, whereas in Illinois there were only 105. So the reason why we don't find an effect of that law is that they're not using it effectively.
I didn't see.
The second point I want to make is that the majority of gun owners support these laws. Our survey found that 70% of gun owners support these laws. And in fact, 61% of Republican gun owners support these laws. And 55% of conservative Republican gun owners support these laws. So no one is going to get voted out of office in Michigan in 2023 because they support a red flag law.
That they don't have access to.
And the third and final point I want to make is that despite their support for red flag laws, there are some details that we found are very important to gun owners that I think the committee, and I hope the committee will consider.
And then got the guns and did it. So
gun owner support for these laws could actually range anywhere from 20% to 80%, depending on what the specific provisions in the law are. And I want to tell you what those provisions are and suggest that the committee consider some amendments to the bill. So of the 68% of gun owners whose opinion actually changed based on the provisions of the bill, 58% would only support the bill if it has a fine for someone who is using the law vindictively.
Thank you, Dr. Siegel.
57% would require the expeditious return of firearms once the order expires. 50% required timely due process hearing before permanent removal of guns. And the majority of gun owners support a free mental health exam. So I would respectfully urge the committee to look at amending the.
So I understand what he said just by his numbers when he broke those down. He's saying that no gun owner supports red flag laws because they don't have timely hearings. They don't have mental health screenings. They don't have, you know, timely return of firearms if it's proven to be wrong. None of that's in these laws. So what he's effectually saying is no gun owner supports your bullshit ass law. So it's funny because the more you inform people about how these laws work, the more and more that support slides off. Because you can ask somebody, you put out a poll today, you asked all of us, are you in favor of gun safety? Every one of us is going to go, hell yes. But our version of gun safety is training with a firearm, being proficient in a firearm. Our version of gun safety is 4 rules. Always loaded. Never pointed at anything you don't intend to destroy. Finger off the trigger. Know your background. Know your target. What's behind it. That's our gun safety. Now, if you broke it down and you asked us, are you in favor of the government enforcing gun safety and taking people's guns, then we're going to go, fuck off. So, yeah, polls can be extremely misleading.
Bill, to have those provisions in it, and I'm happy to provide any more information that you would like about the potential amendments.
All right, thank you both very much, Olivia, Troy, as well as Dr. Siegel. Questions from committee members, starting with Senator Runstead.
Thank you. I'm glad you brought those provisions up, because when you start surveying people just in general, a concept, you can get all kinds of results. When you get into the details, that's a completely different matter. The 4 provisions you just mentioned, I think, would make a huge difference in these bills. And from the previous lady that testified, yes, in Michigan, we have felony firearms that you go to jail and you can't get a firearm for a very long time period. But the 2 prosecutors believe in pleading down these, and that's what happened with the shooter in Michigan State. He was able to then get, based upon the plea down, was able to get a gun. A question I have is, are either of you aware of gun registration leading?
Sam, you bring something up there, man. Plenty of kids have gotten bullied in the past. So I'm 40, just turned 46 not too long back. When I was in middle school, elementary, towards the end of elementary school is when you started hearing more and more about this no or zero tolerance shit. But we still had kind of schoolyard rules to where, if you were getting bullied, you stood up to a bully. If your friend got bullied, you stood up to the bully for your friend. So even if you got your ass kicked, that bully knew you weren't an easy target. What we've done effectively, or what educators have done in their wisdom, with all the shit they've done in the last little while, is they've actually ended up protecting the bullies. Because if you defend yourself against the bully, you get punished just as bad. But see, here's the thing. If you're fighting back against the bully, you probably care that you're missing school. You probably care that you're going to miss a grade or get a bad grade. That bully doesn't give a rat's ass. He's going to get sent home. He's going to get suspended. He's still going to go kick someone else's ass tomorrow. He doesn't care. And what we've done for decades now is if we've taken kids' coping methods and then we expose them to more and more adverse conditions. And then this kid decides that just because he's been hurt, that he's justified in taking that pain out on everybody else. That's what these school shootings in a lot of cases are about. They're all about inflicting their pain on somebody else.
To a reduction in gun deaths anywhere in the nation, gun registration?
Senator
results from
Runstead.
Studies?
Yeah, Senator Runstead, we've looked at that, and we have not found any effect of registration laws. We looked at about 20 to 25 different laws. We did not find any state where having registration led to a decrease in homicide or suicide rates. So those are not among the laws that we found are most effective. The laws that we found are most effective are laws that are specifically designed to keep guns out of the hands of people who are the most dangerous, not laws that have to do with either regulating the type of gun, the number of guns, or recording who does or doesn't have a gun.
And I would agree with you 100% in keeping the guns out of those dangerous people. It's not being done in Michigan. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again so much for your testimony. Up next, we have Dr. Michael Rice, the state superintendent, and Dr. Pugh, the state school board president. And after that, we will take some opposition testimony.
Chairwoman Chang and members of the committee, good morning. I appreciate your leadership today and particularly that of Senator Bayer, as well as the opportunity to testify briefly with State Board President Dr. Pamela Pugh. This is a hearing that's been too long in the making, as you well know. We've lost too many children and adults to gun violence. Twice in 15 months, we've lost young people in our schools, first in Oxford and then at Michigan State University. What do we tell our children, those who are alive but scared? That it makes sense for guns to be in the hands of people who are dangerous to themselves or others and who we knew to be dangerous to themselves and others before they committed murder. That it makes sense to have background checks for gun sales in stores but not at gun shows. That it makes sense to let parents buy guns but not safely store them. That it makes sense not to hold people accountable for crimes associated with guns that they purchased and didn't safeguard. Our children are very much watching today. A summer 2022.
Okay, this dude's pissing me off, so I gotta stop this right here for a second. One, none of us believe that it is okay for a violent person who is a threat to society to have a gun. None of us. Also, that last part he said, people being criminals or whatever for buying a gun and then not storing them properly. Kiss my ass. Who are you to tell me whether I store my guns properly or not? Because my guns don't run out and do things on their own. So for something to happen with my firearms to negatively affect an innocent person, that means someone has to break into my home and then steal my property and then go out and commit this act. All things I'm not responsible for. So again, you can blow me. This whole I owe something to society is horse shit. I owe exactly dick to society. Okay, I give certain things to society because I am a decent person. I try to respect people because I am a decent person. I don't owe them a goddamn thing. It's that whole thing. Respect is earned. This whole, we owe this big thing to society. No, we don't. I owe myself and my family for me to try to be a good person and to be an honorable man and to go to work and to try to take care of them and to teach my children right and wrong. I don't owe society shit. Matter of fact, the one time I did owe society shit, I paid them in spades. And now I don't owe them nothing.
Poll conducted by Epic MRA found that majorities of 5 groups, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, NRA members, and concealed weapon permit holders all support common sense gun safety initiatives, requiring background checks on all gun sales, enacting a child access prevention law that would hold gun owners accountable for for the safe storage of firearms, preventing sales of all firearms to people who have been reported to law enforcement as dangerous to themselves or others, requiring a waiting period of at least 3 days before a gun purchase can be effectuated, imposing criminal penalties or fines for those who buy firearms for another person, requiring a person to be age 21 instead of 18 to be able to purchase an assault-style weapon, establishing a court-issued protection order called an extreme risk protection order for those who pose a threat to themselves or others. Some may argue that this is simply about mental health and that we need to strengthen our mental health services, strengthen our physical security at schools. I believe we need to do both, but that we need to do both and that that is sufficient. Two different things. We also need to address the ready availability of guns in our community. We need strengthened gun safety laws as well.
I'm going to let this play for a little bit, but I have to make this. Let me make my argument that this is all about mental health. Mentally healthy people don't go out and kill innocent people. That is a mental health issue that should be addressed. Mentally healthy people also don't depend on the government for their fucking safety. Unless they are a small child that can't defend themselves and depends on their parents for their relative safety. Other than that, if you depend on the government for your safety, you are not a mentally healthy individual. So yes, it is about mental health. G23 with a 40 for life. Love you, brother.
We know that laws themselves cannot fully protect us, but we also know that there are gaps in our current statutes. Senators, we can't build a better past, but we can damn sure build a better future. Help us do so quickly before we lose more children and needlessly. Our kids are watching. Who we are is on full display today. Thank you.
Yeah, tactical. You know what common sense is? Common sense is I'm not responsible for someone else's actions. Common sense is that I have property in my home and someone doesn't have the right to just come in and take it without just compensation. Whether or not they are wearing a badge or whether or not they break in the middle of the night not wearing a badge. That is common sense. Common sense is an inanimate object, by definition, is an inanimate and it can't do anything by itself. So it therefore cannot be responsible for actions taken with it. Just like that nail, I hit that bitch with a hammer. It's not the hammer that's actually doing it. The hammer is the tool. It's merely a doubler of force to drive a nail. These people are absolutely insane because you want to know where the difference in between our future ends and where theirs ends. Okay, our future, if we play things out like we believe, our future ends up with people being able to defend themselves against everyday threats and the government. Their future play allowing criminals to have even more free reign, and at the end, the government loading you on fucking train cars. That's where their future ends up. They're just too goddamn stupid to see it. Either that or they're just tools of the state, which there can be a good argument made for both of those options. Because some of them think they won't be the ones loaded onto the goddamn train cars. Good exercise for history. Find me a government in the history of man that ever had the tools to become tyrannical that did not become tyrannical. That government has never existed, because when governments have the power to become tyrannical, 100% of the time, they become tyrannical. I didn't think I was going to get that pissed off during this, but
Thank you. Dr. Pugh.
Chair Chang,
Yeah,
to Minority Vice
500, I'm
Chair
leaning with you.
Runstead, and members of this committee. Thank you for this opportunity for Dr. Rice and I to testify before you regarding one of the most important issues of our lifetime. On my mind right now is my best friend, who is an educator in Saginaw, who had to take off 5 years previously because what she saw in the classroom, not only the defunding of education, loss to funds in her paycheck and healthcare insurance, but the loss of children, and it took a toll. So she took a 5-year break. She's back and is a principal in the Saginaw School District. I'm thinking of my friend Charlie, who I spoke with last night, who lives in Atlanta, moved her family from Saginaw to Atlanta, but had a son that wanted to come back and visit back in 2008 and did not go back home. Because when he was on that visit, a child brandished a gun, was showing him a gun, and unfortunately, the gun went off. It was not properly stored. But getting to my testimony, on behalf of the State Board of Education, I want to first thank the Senate and House Dems and our governor for proposing and supporting legislation to pass laws that are proven to protect the lives of all Michigan children. As a public health professional, I understand that gun violence prevention is about secure storage of firearms and ammunition, universal background checks for gun purchases, and preventing guns from getting in the hands of the wrong people. And it must also be about equitable investment in our schools, our neighborhoods, and adequate provisions for mental health and social and emotional supports. This is why Senator Rosemary Bayer is to be commended for leading these tireless efforts to build, expand, and strengthen a coalition of diverse opinions to ensure comprehensive and swift action to prevent gun violence. And we all know that preventing gun violence is not about taking away the Second Amendment rights or guns from healthy, law-abiding citizens, as some wish to mislead folks into believing. And it must not be about the hardening of our schools. This moment is about all Michigan children knowing that their lives and their futures are valued by their policymakers on both sides of the aisle. This moment is about our children not having to question whether their lawmakers are more focused on disarming them and their educators of books by Black authors and those that tackle issues like racism and gender identity than it is about disarming violent actors of weapons that are used to take their lives away.
Thank you.
This moment that calls for us to be bigger than the issues that.
So this lady, educator, supposedly, just told you exactly where she stands on some things. She thinks all of this is racist. She thinks that, parents having a dispute on which authors are taught to their children and which version of history is taught to their children is racist. And this is all about color. That's where this lady's at.
Divide us and demands unity and swift bipartisan action to address this public health crisis before us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you both for your leadership and for your remarks. Any questions from committee members? Senator Runstead.
You did make a point about the violence that is out there, and one of the things that would make a huge difference is
tactical. That's the freaking way to do it. My kids, again, My daughter, when she was 3 years old, her favorite toy for a long time was the freaking return spring out of an AK, because she was handing me tools while I was building guns. My daughter there's no mystery to guns for her. She knows they go boom. My daughter has seen what bullets do to tissue, because she has seen me drop a deer dead in front of her and then seen me clean that deer and saw what an exploded heart looks like. I don't sugarcoat anything with her. I'm not with my son. My son's 3. My daughter's 6 now. They're being taught this stuff for a reason, because I don't want there to be any mystery to them. I want them to know exactly how a gun operates and exactly what terminal ballistics are, what a round does to tissue, so that they understand that's not a goddamn toy. Nerf guns are one thing. Hey, funny, we can run around the house and shoot each other all day with them. But when it's an actual gun, that's not a toy. And it is used for defense. It's used for hunting. It's used for target shooting. I want them to be as proficient with guns as they could possibly be, so that, God forbid, if there is ever a time in their life where they have to use one in defense, that they're able to damn do so.
Is we have nationally 12,000 felons a year trying to get a gun illegally. It's a very serious crime. And the Biden administration pursued 12 out of 12,000. How many crimes would it stop if there was true enforcement? And somebody said, well, they didn't have the resources. They just spend trillions of dollars. It would be nothing to pursue these 12,000 people. So enforcement, I hope, becomes a big part of preventing these crimes. Thank you.
Would you like to respond? You don't have to.
I will say, in talking to my friend Charlie last night, we want to make sure that no child is dehumanized. It doesn't matter where and how gun violence takes place.
Yeah,
this is a time where we all must be united, and we are. Our hearts go out to the children of Oxford, the educators of Oxford, as well as MSU, and all the families within communities. And that's where our focus needs to be.
Thank you. Thank you again. Up next, we're going to have Amy Trotter from the Michigan United Conservation Clubs in support of Senate Bill 81 and 82, and in opposition to Senate Bills 76 through 80 and 83 to 86.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Amy Trotter, and I'm the Executive Director of Michigan United Conservation Clubs, the largest statewide conservation organization in the country. I'm here representing my 40,000 members and 200 member clubs. Our membership consists of thousands of hunters, anglers, trappers, and shooters, and many of our affiliate clubs and members are active in the recreational shooting sports, where many of our clubs operate firearm ranges as well. We truly have a grassroots policy setting process, though. Our members determine the policy of the organization, not the staff. I'm paid to be here, like all of you as well, representing my constituents. MUCC's policies positions are drafted, debated, and voted on by our members. We do oppose Senate Bills 76 through 80 and 83 through 86. We do support 81 and 82 as standalone sales and use tax exemptions on gun safety devices. Promoting and educating on safe and lawful firearm use and storage falls within the scope of our organizational mission, and we'd like to do more with you on that, on education. I did share my written testimony last week, which I have amended and provided for you for this week, addressing some of our concerns of how they would impact hunters and anglers, or hunters and trappers, shooters. Of course, they would have, as introduced, impacted and inhibited training new hunters. We would have had troubles with youth hunting, throughout the state because of the requirement to have a license to possess. Now, we believe the substitutes that you just adopted and the one that passed the House last night actually addresses these issues by only requiring a background check and license to purchase a long gun, making necessary changes throughout the bills as well. This is important change, and we urge you to preserve it in any future iterations as well. But we did want to bring up a few more things that have just come to my attention. Long gun transfers among immediate family members. Existing law has a procedure for inheriting pistols at the time of death. If this legislation were to go forward in even an amended version, I would now not be able to transfer firearms to my daughters when they turn 18 or upon my death, without them having to go through the procedure of applying for a license for every one of them. These are firearms that have already been using in their young lives at ages 5 and 10, and they'll grow up with for the next decade or more. They're part of our family traditions and our hunting heritage. And I would urge you to consider an amendment that was actually offered but not approved in the House Judiciary Committee just yesterday that would allow for a license exemption for transfer of firearms to immediate adult family members who are not otherwise prohibited from possessing firearms. I also wanted to bring up a unique issue. Again, this is something that is not necessarily among my membership, but an Amish issue was brought to my attention. They have a strong tradition of hunting, trapping, and fishing. They also are not able to currently purchase firearms from an FFL because they do not have a driver's license or a picture identification. So we wanted to flag this as an issue. They're not allowed, they do not have any way to prove themselves as a legal resident of the state. You only need a sworn affidavit to vote, and we would ask you for some consideration for that exemption as well.
Thank you. Wanted to say thank you for the feedback that we received, and as you know, we did incorporate some changes and appreciate your acknowledgement of that. Did have a question. We do know that there was a point raised about Amish individuals. We did check with the Secretary of State's office, and I believe that they actually do provide identification to Amish individuals who request it. So maybe we can have a discussion about that. But it's my understanding that there actually are Amish individuals who do have identification at the state level. So maybe we can, figure out if there's a way that we can resolve that.
Come on down.
Any questions from committee members?
We do have additional written testimony on the other bills as well, so I urge you to read that. There are suggested amendments as well.
Thank you so much. Oh, Senator Santana.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. I have a quick question. I know that you've mentioned that part of your tradition is transferring those guns to adult children. Has there ever been a circumstance where that's a part of a will or a trust circumstance where that transfers are conducted in that manner, or is it just to pass along those firearms to the family?
Absolutely. As an organization that receives firearms even as bequests. So these property firearms are definitely named at some points in time in a will or request. And again, we have provisions already for how to deal with the pistol inheritance issue. We would ask that long guns not be considered in the same way because, again, they are part of these traditions. And there may be a very clear reason why that, 350 Bushmaster goes to a very specific individual in the family because maybe they shot their first deer with it.
And see what happens in some states, and I think New York's one. So if I have a firearm registered to me and I pass away, I can't just merely write something down and say I'm leaving that to my adult child. The state will actually come and say, hey, where's this gun that was registered to this person? They're dead. We're taking that gun.
So there might be meaning on each individual one. So they can be transferred through bequest, but even I'm asking to not wait until I pass away to sort of allow for these transfers to happen, but really when my children reach adulthood.
Why did Mama get you?
All right. Oh, Senator Runstead.
Why did Mama get you?
Yeah, I was just, you'd mentioned the registration of the rifles and shotguns, and was wondering if you were aware that each of those is used in about 1% of violent crimes. And to put this in perspective, knives and other cutting instruments are used in 6% of homicides, well over double the number of homicides that rifles and shotguns are used.
We are absolutely aware of that, and that is why we continue to oppose those bills. But we did want to just offer up these things as they relate to hunting specifically, because if these bills ultimately become law, we do not want to have to overwhelm our law enforcement with registration. But yes, we oppose the bills for that reason. We're just trying to be, I guess, pragmatic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and we appreciate the pragmatism. Up next, we have Christina Lake, who is an attorney.
I like how she's blew that. We appreciate the pragmatism. What? Like, what'd you just say?
We can come back to her if you can try to. Christina Lake.
Lyke, Lyke.
While we're waiting on her, we will bring up Bob Matthews from the Congressional Sportsman Foundation.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Bob Matthews, and I am testifying today on behalf of the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation. CSF exists to promote policies that benefit hunters, anglers, recreational shooters, and trappers. I did want to talk today specifically about Senate Bill 76, which deals with the licensing and background checks. So similar to what Amy said, our issues were with the requirement to have a license to possess, which your substitution has directly changed. And so although this is not something that we can come to a position of support on, it does move us towards neutrality. And I would request that those be preserved going forward. So thank you, and I'll yield back my time.
Any questions from committee members? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, we have on Zoom Ted Sadler.
Support on, it does move us towards neutrality. And I would request that those be preserved going forward. So thank you, and I'll yield back my time.
Any questions from committee members? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, we have on Zoom Ted Sadler. Ted, are you there? Ted, if you could unmute and speak, we're eager to hear your testimony. All right, we're going to come back to Ted. We do have Tom Lambert in the room from Michigan Open Carry. Did he turn this in today? All right, we will move on. Hopefully he'll be here in a bit. Why don't we bring up Christopher Lee from the National Shooting Sports Foundation.
Yeah, Sam. Dude, I don't care if I leave it written down.
Chair Chang, members of the committee, my name is.
If I just scribble it down on a napkin and I say I want to leave my guns to so-and-so or my kids, that's my business. That was my property. The government shouldn't have a goddamn say-so in any of it.
Ms. Chris, there he is. Do you want me to continue or?
Go ahead and continue, and we'll get to you next. Thank you.
All right. Chair Chang, members of the committee, my name is Chris Lee, and I'm here on behalf of the National Shooting Sports Foundation. NSSF is the trade association for the firearm industry across the country. So we represent about 10,000 firearm companies nationally. Here in Michigan, our industry employs 11,700 Michiganders. I speak today in opposition of the package as a whole, but I want to focus on the red flag provision and the storage provision. So we as an industry spend a lot of time supporting R3 efforts. R3 stands for recruitment, retention, and reactivation, trying to recruit new hunters, new sport shooters to our industry. I think that the red flag provision in this bill, and I know it's been changed a little bit, but I do think that it still creates a hurdle and confusion for people that might want to invite their friends to come out and shoot and come out and hunt and fish, and, enjoy the outdoors as people have done in Michigan for hundreds of years. So I do have concerns with that bill, and I haven't had a chance to look through the amended version very much. But the biggest point on this is that, as Senator Runstead mentioned, it's really unnecessary. When you look at crime rates with shotguns and rifles yearly, according to the FBI, more people are killed with hands and feet than with shotguns and rifles. So I understand what you're trying to do, but the firearm industry already conducts checks on all firearm purchases. If you're a member of the firearm industry, you're already doing these checks. And like I said, these items aren't really causing issues. Secondly, we oppose the mandatory storage bill. So we as an industry are very supportive of storing firearms. We've actually, over the last 25 years, provided 110 million free gun locks with firearms. So a large portion of that has been done since 1998 as required by law. So federal law already requires that we provide locking devices with pistols. But we voluntarily have provided about 40 million more locks through local law enforcement and through other means to people for rifles and shotguns as well. So very supportive of storage, but I think people know best how to store their firearms without the government telling them how to do so. Finally, I do have one concern. We oppose.
Now you hear the whole moms demand action crowd in the background. Understand, there are two things that safe storage laws mean. One, that the government gets to come into your home at any time to make sure you are storing your guns properly. And two, it means that it is just a charge after the fact, meaning something happens with your gun, the government says, well, you weren't storing it properly, and they fine you or jail you. That's what safe storage is. We all know in the real world, if the locks on my doors don't stop someone from breaking into my home, having an extra layer of protection against them stealing my guns is nice, but it shouldn't be needed in the first place, because how about this? Don't kick in my fucking door and steal my shit. Damn it. Remember, my kids are home here to kind of watch my language.
The package as a whole, but with red flags, I think one thing that I haven't heard mentioned that I want to bring up is that, typically due process includes legal representation. The way it's written here in Michigan and the way it exists in law is you wouldn't be represented, you wouldn't have legal representation. Isn't that a key part of due process? I think that's a major concern if we're talking about forfeiting a constitutional right. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any questions from committee members? Senator Runstead.
You said you had some issues with those safe storage bills. What were those?
With the safe storage bill?
I thought that's what you said.
With
the safe storage bills, I didn't know if I thought you.
Yeah, well, the point on the safe storage bill is that the industry is supportive of it, of providing storage devices, but not in mandating certain ways to store a firearm, because you don't know where a person lives, how they might need to protect themselves in certain circumstances. So for that reason, we oppose. It's just not a one-size government-fits-all solution. Very unique decisions have to be made on an individual basis.
I actually had a question for you. I know you mentioned the legal representation aspect. We do have in the bill language around a fact that the restrained individual may seek the advice of an attorney regarding the order. I'm curious if you have specific suggestion that we can consider.
So I think they may seek advice, right? But in criminal courts, you're guaranteed representation. In this case, you would have to pay for the representation on your own, and not everybody can afford that. And I think that's an issue, and that's part of due process is being guaranteed representation. So here, as long as the person has to pay for it themselves, I think due process isn't really being fulfilled.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. And then Tom from Michigan Open Carry, welcome back.
Sam, I don't understand people that want to depend on the state for every bit of.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I tried to run as fast as I could. Members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Tom Lambert. I am the Legislative Director for Michigan Open Carry. I've been speaking before you for over a good decade now on matters of firearm legislation. We are in opposition to effectively all but the sales tax bills. I think I wrote the whole string, but all but the sales tax bills. Really quick. Simply put, what the public is being told about these bills is not what these bills are. And I get that that's tough to do. How do you convey what legislation does that could be many, many pages long to the general public who doesn't pay attention to the same extent we do? Because that's what we're all here for. The first set of bills about their so-called background checks, it's not about background checks. They don't require background checks per se, they require licensing, especially on all pistol sales. We go back to the way things used to be under the sub that has been adopted now, where all pistol sales require a license to purchase before you can get a pistol. Doesn't matter how many pistols you have already. Doesn't matter how much background checks or how many background checks you've gone through. All pistol sales now have to go through that license to purchase. Then you go to the store and you go through another background check after that. It was already decided a while ago that we could eliminate the duplication of effort and save a lot of people, especially in government entities, a lot of time and money. Further, the bills still frustrate out-of-state hunters and minors who wish to hunt and wish to engage in learning firearm safety. The sub does not do that to the same extent the introduced bill does, but the sub still does have problems. I want to give you an example that was just shared with me out in the lobby by one of my members who said a couple years ago, he provided a shotgun to a female friend of his who was 20 years old at the time over the weekend to protect her from an attacker. That attacker came the very next day, and because she had that shotgun, she was able to protect herself. Don't get me wrong, no firearm was fired. It was a good kind of defensive encounter where nobody had to get harmed. That's the great kind. That's the kind you want. You don't want somebody harmed. Under this legislation, she would not have been able to do that. It would not even have been an option for her to do that because these places where you go and get the license are not open during the weekend. And a lot of times, they often take days to get the license, preventing people who need need protection immediately from getting the protection that they need. For the red flag stuff, they're called extreme risk protection order is a determination of extreme risk ever required in here. That's not the standard. It's a misnomer to the public. And to demonstrate that, let me give you an example of how these bills work and the harm that they're going to do to people. Put yourself into the situation of somebody who actually has problems. We should be concerned about them. Put yourself into their mind. One morning, the police show up at your door. They say, we have a search warrant to come in here and take all the guns that we can find. You're not going to like that, but you let them in. They take all the guns that they can find. They leave and say, hey, don't do anything wrong. Don't do anything bad. Don't harm yourself. Don't harm somebody else. Just don't do that. How's that going to make you feel? Okay, you brush it off. You say, fine, I get to go to court here in a little while. Maybe I can figure this out and I'll get them back. And so you get dressed, you get cleaned up, gather yourself, you go into work, and you get to work and they say, I'm sorry, we've had to let you go.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony.
Madam Chair, that other people have been allowed to speak for quite a long period of time.
As mentioned, we have the 3-minute timer and we've been pretty consistent across the board. I do have a question which will allow you some time to talk a little bit further. You mentioned you had a point around not in our bill, not being able to really consider what extreme risk is. I guess I would point to Section 7, which is all about being able to identify what the extreme risk is. And it says that the court shall issue an extreme risk protection order if the court determines by the preponderance of the evidence that the respondent poses a significant risk of personal injury to the respondent or others by possessing a firearm. And then
Now, no court, no judge wants to be the one who has this brought up in front of them and they go, no, you don't have enough evidence. And then that person actually goes out and does something violent. So what are they going to do? They're going to be on the extreme opposite end of that, which means there's going to be almost no evidence needed, and they're going to rubber stamp that shit. It's what they do with protection orders, where someone can go get a protective order against their spouse or boyfriend or girlfriend with no damn evidence. They can just say, he called me a bad name or she called me a bad name. All of a sudden, I have a protective order. Because no judge wants to be the one who erred on the side of caution and then something happened. So they're going to be overreactive to the issue. That's the way these red flag laws, risk protection orders are going to work. And here's the damned of it is in most of these bills. Someone could watch one of my YouTube videos and say, I looked awful angry about gun control in my YouTube video, and report me to my sheriffs. And all of a sudden my sheriffs are knocking at my door wanting to collect my goddamn guns because I said I don't like gun control and I was a little angry. And if you don't believe that that could happen, if you read these red flag laws as they're written, that is exactly what can happen. And if you think there's going to be any recourse against someone who does that to a person, in other words, I'm not a threat, they use this shit against me, my shit gets taken. If you think I have any recourse against them, you're dead ass damn wrong. They're not going to be convicted of wrongful, accusal or some shit. That's not going to goddamn happen. And if you want a prime example of that, look at all the women who have accused men of rape and they were flat out lying. It was proved they were lying. And guess what? Not a goddamn thing happens to them. So you think the same thing won't happen with red flag laws? Honestly, if you think the same thing won't happen with red flag laws, you're just as dumb as that chick still sitting there wearing a goddamn mask.
And it has about 2 pages of specific things that the judge would be able to consider in making a determination of whether or not there is an extreme risk.
So just as you said, preponderance of the evidence of a significant risk. At no time does the legislation require a determination of an extreme risk.
Well, I guess we will just disagree here, but I think we have done our best to be very clear about things that the judge should consider in making a determination and whether or not there is that significant extreme risk. If you have specific suggestions of risk factors to consider or process changes, we'll be open to those suggestions. Any questions from committee members? Senator Johnson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question on the safe storage substitute 79. I've been reading through it, and on pages 6, 7, and 8, there appears to be possible that would impact manufacturers.
I just saw that,
It strikes the prohibitions on civil and criminal actions against those who manufacture or sell ammunition or firearms based on how they might be used by the purchaser. And I just wanted to know how you think that would impact our state. And do you think this would allow prosecution of a seller or manufacturer for the actions of a purchaser years down the road?
Senator, thank you for the question. I briefly looked through that substitute, and I think your concern is spot on. Generally, in our society today, we do not hold people accountable for the illegal actions of a third party. So if I do something lawful, if I transfer something lawfully to somebody else, and that person then goes and does something unlawful with it that I didn't know about, I had no idea that that was going to happen, I didn't encourage in any form of way, our society understands that people shouldn't be held lawful or liable for that. Those provisions are meant to protect exactly that kind of stuff and meant to protect manufacturers and dealers from frivolous lawsuits that we absolutely know will occur. They started to crop up a number of years ago before some federal legislation started tamping them down. And even today, we're still seeing them all across the nation. Now, you might say, well, what if somebody's not liable? It can still cost a considerable, well into the six figures amount of money to defend yourself against a frivolous lawsuit here. And eliminating those provisions will absolutely subject every manufacturer and every dealer in the state to these frivolous lawsuits, no matter how compliant with the law they are.
So I just wonder, because we really haven't discussed that part of the bill and it's brand new, best I can tell. So would Michigan be the home for new unprecedented class action lawsuits to people who have followed the law in manufacturing or selling?
The future will tell, but I would expect so.
Thank you.
Senator Runstead.
I would agree with you on a couple of things. One, that you were cut off quicker than some of the people I saw go longer. I know they can chuckle all they want. But you're also correct about the preponderance of the evidence standard. For those who don't know, it means one seed more on the scale that you believe as a judge something did or did not happen. It's the lowest possible standard to lose a constitutional right. That's absolutely clear. And then you were beginning to talk about this person who had their guns removed could also be impacted with the job loss. Could you outline that?
Yes, sir. I was giving the story about how you shrug off that you just had this invasion of your privacy where somebody comes through your entire home looking for something and they took everything that they could find. And that's a horrible experience just for a normal person who doesn't have problems. It's a horrible experience if you do have problems. But then again, you go into your job, you go to work, you figure you'll deal with it later, but you get there and you learn that you've been terminated because the bill requires that your employer be notified. And we all know how that's going to happen. Sorry, you've got one of these orders against you. We can't have you working for us. You know, maybe you can figure it out later, but we can't have you working for us. Best case scenario is probably paid leave if you even qualify for that. But this stuff isn't a let's help people, because in the bill, there is absolutely zero mention of mental health, except for one point. There's one tiny mention of mental health, and that's to allow a mental health professional to get one of these orders against you. The only mention about mental health in these bills is to disincentivize people that need help from seeking the help that they need. And because of that, there is research that shows that these bills do have a negative effect. Now, yes, there might be a scenario where it could have a positive effect, but you have to take the cost benefit and weigh them together. If you ignore the cost and pretend it doesn't exist, you will harm people. And that is exactly what will happen here. This isn't a help people. This is a push people over the edge bill in its current form.
Thank you for your testimony and for the questions. We're going to go back to Christina Like because I believe she is back in the room. And then after that, we will hear from Sheriff Swanson.
What you got? What you got?
May I ask why the time frame wasn't applied last week when all the people in favor of these bills testified?
As I mentioned last week, we had a number of folks share very emotional testimony about their experiences as survivors of gun violence. And so I thought it was very important to hear their testimony. Ms. Lake, we would love to hear your testimony.
No, Dad's not getting up right now. Daddy's doing something.
I do apologize.
Oh,
I am an attorney.
What are you trying to tell him? You trying to tell your sister?
So first of all, good morning. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I just wanted to recall the events on MSU. At MSU, I remember the call that I received personally that evening. This is a really personal issue to me because my law clerk was almost killed that night. I was looking for him all night long, right? 1:30 in the morning, I finally get a call and it's him. It's not a call, but it's a text. And he indicated he was okay.
Okay, this is going to be really, really, really bad, but I have to say it. Do you guys remember the show Third Rock from the Sun? Does she not look like a really over the weight version of what's her name on that show? I'm so going to hell.
But the thing of it is, there was bullets flying. He came out and he saw actually that this woman came out and her boyfriend was shot. So he was barricaded all night long. Again, I was trying to find him and my other law clerk, but I just want to let you know that because I do have empathy over this. And it's a very personal issue to myself. Now, these bills introduced, I'm a criminal defense attorney. I'm also a family law attorney. So this is really personal to me too, because these bills introduced today do not save children from safe zones. These they don't even save us from the criminals who are mentally ill. I deal with a lot of mentally ill individuals in criminal law. And you don't even look at that. The registration bill, the shooter, he didn't even register his guns. So this bill does not make sense. It's only going to make more work for the sheriff's department. The safe lock storage, it doesn't save lives from the criminals who are actually coming in and they come into your house, they rob your house. I've seen this. I've represented individuals. They committed home invasions, and they're mentally ill. They want to get their heroin and they're going to get their fix because they're going to self-medicate themselves. So what does this do? When an invader comes into the house, they're going to shoot you or your child. Bam, your child is dead because you could not go get your gun out of that locked storage safe. So not only did you kill a child, but we didn't save any lives that day, right? When you place this, and I read in the bill last night, and I'm not sure if this is true or not, but I saw that it was in the glove box that you can put a gun. One of the provisions is you place the gun in a glove box if there's a child in the house. I don't know whose brilliant idea this was, but this is what happens. A mentally ill individual who's a criminal will just go in because they're trying to rob the vehicle in of itself to go get more money for their drugs to self-medicate themselves. So what happens is they break into the car, they take the gun, and then they go and shoot and harm more people. More blood on your hands. Then we have the red flag law. It's not really called that in your legislation, but it's called the so-called red flag law. This bill doesn't save any laws or save any lives. Instead, this bill creates more litigation in courts. More. And the bill does not only have the Second Amendment, but it violates your Fourth Amendment, the Sixth Amendment, the 14th Amendment. I've seen this with PPOs for the last 2 years, individuals saying lies to get an upper hand on individuals or to use this for divorces. This has been happening for the last 2 years. And then what they do, I'm sorry.
The timer just went off.
Oh, my timer didn't go off. I have 1 more minute. I actually timed myself.
Okay.
For instance, let's say that,
timer here.
Well, mine's right. For instance, let's say that just, if I could just finish this, Senator Chang, I'm sorry. If I could just finish this. I just want to explain this. Let's say that I dated.
So we've been trying to be consistent across all of the speakers for both opposition and supporting testimony. So I appreciate your testimony. I will give you an opportunity to say a little bit more by asking you a question.
Sure.
You did, or actually just rather an update, you mentioned around the glove box. I did want to make sure you know that in the substitute we adopted, the current language, I'm having trouble finding it right now. Currently it includes a, so we actually instead now, after receiving a number of feedback from groups across the spectrum, it would be allowed to be in a glove box if it is in a locked box or container. And I believe we also have language that it would need to be out of sight. Is that correct? Okay.
So it has to be out of sight then, but it's still going to be in your vehicle.
In a vehicle in a locked container. So it could be in your glove box or in your trunk as long as it's within a locked container. And that was based on feedback that we received from a number of stakeholders.
But you do realize that these individuals that have they're mentally ill, okay? They actually go rob the vehicles and then they'll take that lockbox with them.
So actually, the feedback that we got from law enforcement was specifically to not have the glove box and to put it in a locked box away from site so that they won't be stolen out of the car. So we appreciated the input from our law enforcement, and we're happy to incorporate that feedback. Any other questions from committee members? Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Up next, we have Sheriff Swanson from Genesee County.
I received the call at 9:08 that the shooter happened. And within 55 minutes, myself, the undersheriff, and a four-man TAC team responded to Michigan State University. We did 2 tactical operations before the third incident happened. And it was a group of approximately 12 students that were coming from the athletic center and escorted to Landon Hall. As they came in almost single file, holding basketballs and Jordans, we stopped them to ask where they're going and why. They were just excused from that center because of the threat of explosives. When we led them to Landon Hall to be searched individually, to have their backpacks searched, to be identified, every one of them was thankful, gracious, courageous, and calm, knowing that the system that they had been trained in since they were in elementary school worked. They thanked myself and the undersheriff and the MSU PD officer as they walked through the door, knowing that there were already 2 class members that were killed and more, perhaps. That stunning observation is exactly why I'm here. I'm here for 4 perspectives: as an elected sheriff, as a police officer and a licensed paramedic for 30 years, as a dad and as a husband. We have an obligation to build systems to protect people. Not everything is going to protect everybody. I get that. But I do say that when you build out a system because of results of one issue, it seems very specific. But this is an issue we can all agree with when it comes to safety of our people. I will tell you, I have no interest in impeding on gun ownership. I do have an interest in finding, if you can't get everything you want and you can't get everything you want, let's find something we can all agree on and move forward in common ground. When it comes to safe storage, nobody can argue that. We buy cupboard locks in order to keep kids from bleach and medicine cabinet locks to keep people from Benadryl. But when it comes to safe storage, it just makes sense. When it comes to background checks, I have a cleaning crew that comes in at 5:05 every day that the county has hired to clean the office. We have teachers in the jail that teach in Ignite that are going through background checks to teach math and English. The cleaning crew goes through a background check. The teachers go through background check. When you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. I would encourage those, if you're going to take the responsibility.
Okay, if you are working at a sheriff's department or working with prisoners, there is a reason you go through background checks. That is so that they can try to somewhat make sure that you are not going to pass contraband off to prisoners, or if you're working in the sheriff's department, you are not going to steal evidence. You jackass. Take it from someone who was an inmate, you fuck nuts. I wish they did background checks on the guards, because the guards were the ones who were bringing illegal shit into the fucking prison. And yes, you guys just heard me right. Let me do this real quick. I'll throw myself up here a little bigger. Yes, I was around more drugs for a year when I was locked up in prison than I was around when I was on the street walking fucking free. And if you think the goddamn guards weren't involved in letting that shit get into the prison, you're a goddamn idiot. I watch people smoke weed. I watch people smoke fucking crack. I've never been around crack on the street that I know of. I was around it when I was locked up, supposed to be in the state's care. So this jackass running around, background check this, background check that. No, in the United States, dickhead, there's this very simple premise that I am an innocent person until the state proves me guilty of a certain offense. So the state has no reason to deprive me of arms until I am a ward in their care. That is how rights actually work, to let the class know.
If you're going to take the responsibility of owning and keeping a firearm, you should get a background check to make sure that it's appropriate. And I do ask that with my colleagues. I agree with giving a CPL holder a waiver. They've already gone through the test, the testing. They've already gone through the class. These are responsible folks. Maybe in this room, you're a CPL holder. Those folks have already proven that they are responsible to have a firearm. And your third, when it comes to red flags, we know these, and it was just mentioned as a.
Okay, let me stop him there. Why do I have to prove a goddamn thing to the state before I own a gun? Let that sink in. Why do I have to prove a damn thing to the state? See, the state should have to prove that I am somehow not worthy of owning a firearm. I shouldn't have to prove a goddamn thing to the state. So you can take your little badge, you can wad that sumbitch up and do whatever size you would like, kind sir, and shove it dead in your ass.
As a personal protection order. In 2021-22 in Genesee County, I responded to 71 threats at schools and churches for gun violence and bomb threats. We have a protocol in place. Even without the legislation, we go to the school, we interview the teachers, talk to the students, go to the homes. We collaborate to see if there's weapons there and accessing that we get those out. Nobody complains when they go to the TSA to get screened before they go on a plane so they can fly safe. Take keys from a drunk.
Okay. When he says no one complains about that, let me make myself full screen and let me explain to you. I complain about it. I flew back from Germany in 1992. I had handcuffs in my bag. I had a butterfly knife in my bag. I had cigarettes in my bag. I had a lighter in my bag. I was like 14. Matter of fact, one of my biggest regrets before I left Germany was I didn't trade my Smith & Wesson handcuffs to the German Polizei for his issued handcuffs, because he saw me sitting there messing around with him and wanted to trade me, and I wouldn't do it. I should have damn done it. If I wasn't such a little shithead moron, I would have done it. So yeah, I complain when I get searched by TSA. Guess why? I'm not a goddamn threat. If I have a gun on me on an airplane, the only person that has to worry about that would be the dumb motherfucker that would pull a knife gonna cut somebody. These absolute fucking pricks who think that everything the government does, you just lay down for. Oh, it's okay. No, it's only okay. I bite the goddamn bullet because I have to get from point A to point fucking B on that goddamn plane. And you have me under the gun at that point, so to speak. If you want my honest opinion about it, yeah, I don't want to take my belt off, my shoes off, and everything else at the TSA counter and slide all that through your little fucking metal detector. Because I'm not a threat. 99% of the people on that plane aren't a goddamn threat. And guess what? Since 9/11, if you jump up on a threat or on a plane and you are a threat, you tend to catch an ass beating. Because the doctrine on what you do at that point changed after 9/11. For those of you who don't realize, the doctrine before 9/11 was if someone hijacked a plane, you stay compliant. Hopefully they'll fly a plane somewhere and they will basically extort money and you'll go home safe. After 9/11, when they ran planes into buildings and killed every motherfucker anyway, well, then doctrine changed. If you stand up on the plane, I'm taking this aircraft, you're going to catch a beating by everybody on that goddamn plane. So doctrine changed. I shouldn't have to take all my shit off at the airport and strip down damn near butt naked and do the goddamn happy dance to prove I'm not a threat, because I'm not a goddamn threat. What I am a threat to is the person who would stand up on the aircraft and try to do something. I'm a definite threat to him because I don't like heights, and I damn sure don't like hitting the ground at really fast speeds from really high up. People in this country become so goddamn compliant about this shit. And honestly, and I have been too in a lot of cases, but it all comes down to force. The government has larger guns than I do pointed at my goddamn head when I need to do shit. So I bite the bullet so I can go about my life. I should be able to get on an airplane holding a Barrett 50 fucking cal with one locked and loaded.
Driver before they drive and kill somebody, it doesn't take away their ability to drive. All we're doing is giving people the opportunity to stay safe while they have a gun, not take away guns. Common ground is all I ask.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony and appreciate your public service. Senator Santana.
Thank you, Sheriff Swanson, for your testimony. You mentioned a little bit about giving current CPL owners a waiver. Do you think we should, with their re-registration of their CPL license, should we look to, if there's a new gun purchase, add that as a part of the process, just so those firearms are registered? 500
immediately fired.
I can always say that more training and more exposure for those that do it right makes sense. We shoot 4 times a year in law enforcement minimum because there's standards that we have. And I think that if those that have a CPL have already gone through the training.
You shoot 4 times a year as a law enforcement officer who is carrying a gun and going to be involved in incidents with criminals. You shoot 4 times a year. Whoop-de-fucking-do. Even with as little as I shot last year, I can damn near guarantee you in between the 1,500, 2,000, 3,000, probably 4,000 rounds that I shot through ARs, AKs, and pistols last year, that I probably shot more than his entire goddamn department. We 4 times a year. You shoot 4 times a year for proficiency, which is basically hitting a torso target at like 5 yards. I spent 2 days with the Warrior Poet Society doing training that I watched officers who qualify a couple times a year shoot more of the barricade than they did the fucking target. So excuse me if I don't have the most respect for your 4 times training a year, or qualifying a year, not even training, qualifying. You know, there was a time where people could believe that people who like him, who threw on a badge and a uniform, were actually there to protect you. And then you wake up and you realize that they are there to basically deny you of your constitutional rights and draw chalk outlines when you're on the ground dead. That's their job. Fuck off with this. I wear a badge. I got some goddamn level of authority.
The licensing, the actual firearms training, and they purchase a weapon. If they present their CPL, they have already shown that they've done their background. If they are being renewed, then that process is still in place. It's already in place to do it. And I think those folks should get that respected waiver, regardless of how many weapons they purchase.
Again,
Thank you.
why do I have
Senator
to
Runstead.
prove shit to the government?
Well, I would tend to disagree with a number of your analogies. Many of them are not constitutional rights. This is, so it's a different category. You said how many kids were you involved with responding that were making threats in the schools?
I didn't say children. I said 71 instances involving schools and churches and other threats against the building in 2021, 2022 from Genesee County Sheriff's Office.
And were you able to find the culprits?
We do every time. We interview, we search lockers, search vehicles, go to the homes, make sure that there's no access to weapons. And because of my time being cut so short, Senator, I would say that we work to cooperate and to either take the weapons for safekeeping, working with the people there at the house, or they move them to another safe location. But we do not leave weapons there accessible to the one who made the threat.
Have these individuals been prosecuted?
Many of them are not even prosecutable cases. Sometimes it's just a mental health breakdown. There's a threat, but many of them are. You could ask Prosecutor Layton, who testified here, threats against a school. In light of Oxford, we had a lot of those copycat threats. They were all prosecuted. So it's a mix of both.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you again, and thank you for your public service. We appreciate your testimony.
I thank you as well.
Up next, we have John Gold from Gun Owners for Giffords.
We're so new, people don't get the name right every time. I'm with Giffords Gun Owners for Safety. No child deserves to die for being inquisitive. You've already given my name. I'm a gun owner. I have a concealed pistol license, and I've been teaching pistol craft in this state for over 25 years. I train over 40 hours a year, and I've been coached by new.
Let me give you the lowdown on someone such as this. They believe that they are the only ones, they are the gatekeepers to who should own a firearm, who should not. They believe that they have these qualifications, that if you don't have those qualifications, you're not responsible enough to own a firearm. And you have to go through them to actually get your bones to be able to own that firearm. We call these people FUDs. Understand, before I went to Warrior Poet for 2 days, did 2 8-hour classes with him, I had never had a bit of formal pistol training in my life. There were 2 officers in that class, 2 police officers in that class with me. Out of those officers, 1, I didn't look like Deputy Dog, and 2, I didn't shoot the fucking barricade I was supposed to be shooting around. In other words, I was more proficient at actually striking my target without hitting something else than those 2 officers. And they were probably good dudes. They seemed cool when I was with them. You know, sitting on the, loading mags real fast and shooting the shit and stuff. They seemed cool. Now, one dude more than the other one of them seemed like this dude couldn't stand still without looking like a cop. And if you know what I mean, you know what I mean. He had that look. The other dude was, he was cool as shit. Just because you call yourself a gun owner, understand firearms, these guns that we own, it's not about the gun itself. It's about freedom and freedom to choose. So in other words, even if you call yourself a gun owner, if you are someone who actually believes in freedom, then you don't believe you should be making choices for me. So when you throw your credentials out there and you say that you're this and that with a gun and you are a concealed carry permit holder and you're for gun control, kiss my ass. Go start the nearest fucking 12 gauge, dude, because you don't speak for me. All right, that might have been a little harsh. Not so much.
numerous NRA firearms instructors and police officers. I'm also a steadfast supporter of the Second Amendment. I'm also a survivor of gun violence, and I believe that we can take reasonable steps to save lives in Michigan from gun violence. It's not easy to sit here today, but I feel compelled to speak out against irresponsible gun ownership and share this testimony in support of legislation that will make Michigan safer from gun violence. None of these laws, as they are written, infringe on my Second Amendment rights. They do not revoke my right to own or operate a firearm, nor do they prohibit what I can own or where I can carry it.
Yes, they do.
They also allow, even under the State Forage Act, for the weapon to be under my control, which means if I carry holstered in my house, that is not a problem. The problem are unattended firearms, and that is what safe storage is meant to regulate. Data shows that in states where these kinds of measures are taken, firearm deaths by suicide and homicide go down, no matter who else's research has been shared here today. If I believe in the preservation and protection of life, which I have, and I've carried a gun for...
No, dickhead, because much like I showed a little bit ago, I can go onto the CDC's website. I can filter out results according to whatever information I want to put in, and I can find out these statistics instead of you just saying them. Someone, I need to go register for his class, and I need to go to his class and go there for the first day and sit all my shit down and then walk up to him and slap the dog shit out of him. The balls on you thinking you speak for other gun owners? I don't think I speak for other gun owners. I speak for myself. And if other people agree with me, then so be it. But I agree with freedom. In other words, you have the right to be as big a dumbass as you want. I also agree that some people don't get punched in the face enough. Fuck me running. What's the over-under on this guy carrying a revolver or a 1911? And understand, I love 1911s.
For over 25 years. I also believe that we need to take laws to protect people from gun negligence and negligent death. According to a report written by the Michigan Office of Children's Ombudsman, the lives of 20 children and teens could have been saved between January of 2020 and June of 2021 if safe and secure storage had been enforced in the state of Michigan. We also know that half of households nationally with children that contain at least one unlocked gun.
Again, how do you enforce safe storage? You can throw that statistic out there because I could cite statistics. I don't know, 47 chickens just fucked a goddamn rabbit in my backyard. That's my statistic. Prove me wrong. How do you enforce safe storage? The only way you do it is if you can go into people's homes at any time and then fine them or jail them for firearms not stored properly, or you're punishing them after some event happened, someone stole their gun and then did some shit with it, and you, instead of assigning that blame to the person who committed the crime, you find the person who didn't store the firearm according to your rules, and you prosecute them. Sheila Jackson Lee last year, and I'm got to look it up. She's probably got the same bill proposed this year. Someone could call the local police and say, hey, I don't think so-and-so stealing or storing their guns properly. And the police, according to that call, would walk into your home with no warrant necessary and search your home. And if they found a gun that wasn't stored properly, they fined you $500 per gun that was not stored properly, and they took your gun. If they could prove that your gun was not stored properly and someone used that gun in a crime, understand that crime could just be they had a gun without a permit, then you went to fucking prison for it on top of a fine and your property being taken. So I live in this real world where if I stub my toe, it fucking hurts. This guy lives in a world where if I stub my toe, I get to fucking sue whatever I stub my toe on. Critical thinking ain't this dude's strong suit.
Guns, when they switch to locking their guns, 1/3 of youth gun suicides are eliminated, and so are unintentional deaths. It's often touted that responsible gun owners don't need a law to tell them how to safely store their guns, but by national survey, 54% of gun owners do not store all their guns securely. These laws help and encourage responsible behavior, and states that have implemented them.
Okay, I wasn't going to stop this again, but understand what he just said. If those of you who did not catch that little side swipe, national survey, 54% of gun owners did not store their guns properly. In other words, 54% of gun owners did not store their guns according to government mandates, which means the government will take their shit or they will be responsible for anything that happens with their guns. Not the person that actually commits the crime. See, I'm a big believer in people will tell you who they are within the first few minutes of them talking to you on an honest level. This dude just told you who he is. He's a statist. He believes that the government should have more control over your life than you do. And damn near any time they tell you, I am a supporter of the Second Amendment, but there's a rule where anything before the but you can just ignore. And he is a perfect example of that.
Them, including the state of Florida, who implemented safe storage, saw their youth death rate go down 53%. That's under Governor DeSantis.
Also not true.
This is also very personal for me, and I admit that openly. I've lost 3 people in the last 6 years to firearm suicide. My college girlfriend, who is bipolar, was served divorce papers by her husband.
Was she bipolar before or after she dated you, considering you're talking about your college girlfriend? In other words, how bad did you fuck her up?
And left alone in her home with his loaded weapons and an unlocked gun case. I was the last person to talk to her alive. I was on my way to the airport. If you can imagine talking to your wife and telling her you're going to pick up your college girlfriend in California, who is the other woman you'd proposed to, the only other one, that's a hard conversation to have. The bottom line is, I wish they hadn't had access to the most efficient killing machine available. Suicide.
I would submit to the class that firearm suicide is more than likely more survivable than jumping off your nearest skyscraper. And I say that because a lot of people who try to shoot themselves with guns generally do it from side to side. And there are a lot of people who survive firearm suicide because they basically shoot themselves through the front side of the head and never touches their brain. guys like this admittedly have a lot smaller target, much like their pecker, but it doesn't hit anything vital. A lot of damage, nothing vital. Jumping off your average 12-story building, on the other hand.
Dad?
Yeah, babe.
I plugged the computer. But what's your password?
You leave stuff alone. Go. I'll be out there in a minute.
What's your password?
Go.
Will you be able to be there in a minute? So
My
can
child.
Put on your password.
You leave stuff alone. Go. My child. Anyway, back to this dumbass.
Changes. 3% to 7% of suicides are effective until you add a firearm. Then suicide rates become 85 to 90% effective.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony and for sharing your story. Really appreciate it.
Okay. Handy dandy fact about suicides. Let me make myself bigger. Handy dandy fact about suicides. If you take both sexes, male and female, yes, there are only two, get over it, male, female, and you add them both into the same pool of suicides, you completely cloud results. Because men, typically, when we go to commit suicide, we are much more successful at committing suicide. Not to say that's a good thing, but we tend to get it done when we go to commit suicide. Women, on the other hand, are much further down on the number of suicide attempts versus successes, because women don't tend to actually commit to suicide. It tends to be more of an attempt to get someone's attention. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's they're crying out for someone to pay attention to them and realize that they are having some issue. Men tend to, when we go to do something, we will wake up in the morning, drink a cup of coffee, decide we want to die, and we'll go jump off a fucking bridge. It makes zero shits to us. We commit and we just do it. Women are not like that. A woman will wake up. She'll have her cup of coffee. She'll drive to the bridge. She'll drive across the bridge. She'll park. She'll go look at the bridge. She'll stand on the other side of the rail. Then she'll climb over the rail. Then she'll climb back across the rail. Very few women just do it. Pow, done. Men tend to we do it. There's a friend of my brother's. I met him a few times back in the day. This dude was on the phone with, I think, one of my brothers. And it's years after they had, hung around and all this shit. It was, high school friends on a phone call. And dude was on the phone with him. He set the phone down to talk to another dude. He walked right to the back room, blew his brains out. No indecision, just, I'm going to do it. Poof, it was done. That is the way men tend to do stuff. We do it all the time. I'm going to buy a fishing rod. Poof, we buy a fishing rod. My wife can look at a fishing rod for 5 days, put it back down, pick it back up, go to the store 9 times. I'm just going to buy it or I'm not going to buy it. Just the way it is. So when you add men and women into the same mix for suicide, you cloud the results. And that is part of what they do, and it is on purpose. They want to cloud the results. You can take a gun out of the equation, and if it is a guy, he is more than likely going to kill himself in any number of other ways. That's not going to deter him. A woman it might deter. She might get squeamish about pulling all the slack out of that trigger. She might go decide to take a fistful of pills. A guy, on the other hand, he will go jump in front of the nearest freight train. He's probably done it with a fat chick before. He knows what's coming. Fuck, that's another one of those jokes. It's just to make light of some of this shit. You have to understand how these people play with the numbers to understand that it's all horse shit. Like the CDC numbers we looked at earlier. When you take the number of unintended child deaths from firearms from 0 to 9 years old, and you take the number of child unintended deaths from cars from 0 to 9 years old, car deaths far outweigh, I think it's over 2 times, outweigh firearms deaths. Matter of fact, unintentional poisonings are right there with unintentional firearms deaths. So when they tell you this, oh, it's firearms leading cause of death for children in the United States, they're fucking lying to you. If you want to look at the numbers, if you are someone who believes the shit, we can look at the numbers, but let's have an honest look at them. Let's put everything out there on the table. Friendly Extortion, a guy that I follow. If you're not following Friendly Extortion, he's a cool dude. I hang out in his chat sometimes. Haven't said a whole lot for a while. But yeah, let's put it all on the table. Let's look at the facts, not your interpretation of the facts. I don't play well with, well, this is my truth. No, there is truth. There are facts. There is truth. There is your experience, and maybe your experience varies. You got 32 miles an hour or 32 miles a gallon in your car. I rolled the windows down. I got 34. Your mileage was different than mine. The facts are the goddamn same.
Any questions from committee members? Senator Runstad.
Well, when it comes to suicide, there's a lot of statistics. I don't have them all right at my fingertips, but from what I recall, women attempt suicide about the same rate as men. When they interviewed them, very often it was a cry for help. It was not an intent to kill themselves. I've known people in my close circle that were in that situation. Men, not just because there's access to a gun, they have a different perspective. When they've made that decision, they can make that decision, whether it's jumping in front of a train, 100% fatality rate, jumping off a 400-foot building, 100% fatality rate. They've made the decision. My friend who committed suicide made the decision. He's a very resourceful guy. He could have done it any way he wanted. It's just a difference frequently between men and women when they've made that decision. The men make it, you take the gun away, they're resourceful. There's a million ways to do it. Thank you.
Senator, I thank you for your comment. But in my experience, firearm suicide has been 100% effective. 3 people are dead. So I stand.
So is jumping off a building, 100%.
Well, it depends on the height of the building.
Train.
But
a million ways to do it.
Great. Let's stop one.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony. Up next, we have Kelly Sampson on Zoom. She is the Senior Counsel and Director of Racial Justice at the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence.
Good morning, Chair Chang and committee members. I'm here to talk about why these bills are constitutional. I'm an attorney at Brady, an organization that unites gun owners and non-gun owners to prevent gun violence. And as a native Detroiter, I want to protect Michiganders and keep them safe. ERPOs align with the Supreme Court's pronouncement that the right to keep and bear arms is not unlimited. To wit, Justice Kavanaugh Concurring in NYSERPA v. Bruin wrote that, quote, properly interpreted, the Second Amendment allows a variety of gun regulations, end quote. Accordingly, 19 states and DC have ERPO laws that no court has overturned. The ERPO bill also consists with the Second Amendment text and historical understanding because it mirrors historical laws that place firearms restrictions on people who were understood to present a risk to themselves or others. This ERPO bill will keep more Michiganders alive without violating the Constitution. I also strongly support the Universal Background Check bill, extending the existing licensing requirement to all firearms. This bill complies with Bruin's instruction that states shall issue firearms licenses on objective rather than subjective criteria. It also accords with the Second Amendment's text and historical understanding. Public safety concerns and dangerousness have always been the justification for firearms laws, whether in the 1700s or today. Background checks like those proposed here follow in the historical tradition. Finally, the Safe Storage Bill is yet another life-saving constitutional measure. In fact, the Supreme Court noted that nothing in District of Columbia v. Heller would, quote, suggest the invalidity of laws regulating the storage of firearms to prevent accidents. The Safe Storage Bill also meets Bruin's historical test. The Supreme Court itself has noted a 1783 Massachusetts law forbidding Boston citizens from taking or receiving loaded firearms in dwelling houses and other buildings. That is just one example of many early American laws, including one from Ypsilanti, regulating firearm and gunpowder storage. In this way, the safe storage law accords with the historical tradition as required by Bruin, and it does not hinder the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms for self-defense because modern storage devices allow firearm owners to operate and retrieve their weapons in a matter of seconds. Gun violence is the #1 killer of American children, a fact that Michigan tragically knows firsthand. Kids and young adults in Oxford, East Lansing, Detroit, Grand Rapids, and all over are united in facing unnecessary trauma, injury, and death. That's thousands of Michiganders, best friends, coaches, colleagues, hunting buddies, dance partners, quarterbacks, choir directors, teachers, Wolverines, and Spartans who are killed by gun violence in a given year. They deserve better, and there is no constitutional justification for failing to act. Gun owners, gun sellers, and lawmakers have a critical role to play in protecting Michigan. That is why these constitutional bills are an important part of keeping Michiganders safe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from committee members? Senator Runstead.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the study that we have the professor here. It's the one keeps citing that more children are killed from firearms than, say, car accidents. However, they cook the books by including 18 and 19-year-olds, which there's not a single state that counts these as minors yet for the study they do, which now boosts the numbers because now you talk about gang members, shootings, all this gets thrown in. It boosts the numbers by 83%. If it's from young children to 14, they are 60% more likely to be killed in a car accident. Just to clarify, I was wondering if you were aware how this study was conducted.
In watching the hearing earlier, I believe that the author of the study noted that, but I think the important part of the study is that these laws are a way of protecting children and adults in the state of Michigan. And however you calculate it, we know that there are thousands of children who are killed by gun violence that's preventable. And these laws are an important part of doing that. And as an attorney, I can tell you that they're constitutional. They abide by the Second Amendment and the standards that the Supreme Court has laid out.
Thank you. We appreciate your testimony. Up next, we're going to have Bishop Bonnie Perry. She is the chair of End Gun Violence Michigan and leads the Episcopal Church in Michigan. She is on Zoom. Welcome. And if you could hit the unmute button.
All right, we're still in crazy town, guys.
Hi, friends. Thank you very much. It's only been 3 years into the pandemic and Zoom. Gosh, you'd think I'd know about it. My name's Bonnie Perry, and I am the Bishop of the Episcopal Diocese of Michigan. And I speak also for the other Episcopal bishops in the state of Michigan. And we are in favor of the sensible gun bills that we are discussing here today: safe storage, universal background checks, and extreme risk protection orders. The Methodists also support these bills My Lutheran bishop colleagues are supportive. The Catholics are supportive. Our siblings in the Jewish Community Relations Council are supportive. The Council of Baptist Pastors of Detroit are supportive. Fred, I cannot remember the last time that we all agreed on one issue. This matters.
Even healthier.
Last week, I was chatting with members of the legislature, reps and senators who were lamenting the evil of our world and the fallen nature of humanity and pointing out that these bills wouldn't solve those problems. They said, the world is evil.
In the world, that would be cool.
And I agree that there is evil in the world, and we live in a place with with sadness and despair and brokenness and sin. And I believe that people of goodwill and people of faith can do more. We can do more than just drop our shoulders and mournfully say, I am so sorry for your loss. We can do more. And as a Christian, God demands that I do more. I worship a God who came into the world and said, I am resurrection and I am life. Resurrection means that there's always something more. We can do more sensible, bit-by-bit changes. Mandatory seatbelts have not ended car accidents, but they have, however, greatly reduced automobile fatalities. We can do more. We can take action to make our children and our neighbors safer. I envision a world where all of my colleagues' children,
do a little less mess.
when they go to school, that they are not worried. I had colleagues who I had to say, you don't have to come to work today. I know that your son was at MSU, and I know how hard this is. You don't have to come. You need to be with your family. I envision a world where what our children are most worried about when they go into classrooms is figuring out the square root of the hypotenuse, not figuring out the angles of where they need to hide in case an active shooter enters their classroom. And I have heard from some of the smallest, my littlest parishioners, who telling me about how they have to practice hiding and being quiet in school so that when a bad man...
Okay. While she is throwing out her said version of events, I too envision a world, and again, let me make myself bigger. I too envision a world where we don't have to worry about shooters in schools. In the same respect, I didn't create the world that created those shooters. Your ideology did. Because you're basically shilling the same leftist ideology that led to these shooters in the first fucking place. Oh, Coop, you can't say that. Yeah, I can. There have been guns in America since before we became America. There were guns in Alabama since before we became Alabama. I know people older than me that had guns in their trucks every day during high school, and they never shot a single motherfucker with those guns. So the only thing that has changed is the way that we are raising children and the way we are educating children. So don't cite me this shit that, oh, I'm a Christian, and if you're a Christian, you should believe in this shit. Understand, Christianity, Jesus was a Jew. That may not be popular with some people, but you're a fucking idiot if you don't understand that, because there were no Christians before Jesus Christ. He was the actual foundation for the Christianity religion. He was a Jew. He was a fucking rabbi. And guess what happens to Jews when they are disarmed? I'll give you some history because it's happened since the times of Jesus and before then. They got murdered. They got murdered by Romans. They got murdered by people before Romans. They got murdered in fucking droves by Germans. Being disarmed has never been a really cool fucking deal. And if you think that shit stopped with just Jews, ask Native Americans, who, funny enough, I share heritage with both of those groups. And it's never been a real good fucking idea to let the government have guns and you be there twiddling your goddamn thumbs. Tends to lead to shit like a Trail of Tears or gas chambers. So, love you, mean it, sis. Shut the fuck up, sit down, and let the adults goddamn handle this shit.
With a gun comes, he won't find them. We can do more. I envision a world where the gun deaths in our city are not a silent poverty fueled like this plague of death. I envision a world where the help of medical professionals and the police can intercede before an extremely troubled person tries to alter their situation with a gun. And I envision a world where I am not offering pastoral care to one of my clergy who has to officiate at the funeral of 2 of 3 triplets.
Okay, you officiated. Damn, that's a picture to stop this shit on. At the funeral of 2 to 3 triplets. You want to know what happens when mentally ill people are not buttressed by those of us who have firearms? You end up with a motherfucker by the name of Hitler, who is responsible for the deaths of millions. You end up with a motherfucker named Stalin. Yeah, well, but I'm going to cook in a second. My son's bringing me food to cook. You end up with a guy named Stalin, who is responsible for the deaths of many more millions. And you end up with a guy named Mao, who was responsible for way more millions than that. Damn near like they did the body count challenge and just kept on running up the numbers. You can pretty much boil everything down in history when it comes to freedom in between 2 things: property rights and a monopoly on violence. Because when you don't have property rights and the other entity has a monopoly on violence, guess what you get? For those of you who are multiple choice on that question, yes, it was raped, murdered, and dead.
Thank you.
I envision a different world. Let's act.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Up next, we have
I like rainbow folks and
Richard Lloyd, who is the president of the Council of Baptist Pastors of Detroit and vicinity.
Good afternoon. My name is Reverend Richard White III, and I am here on behalf of the Council of Baptist Pastors of Detroit and vicinity. We represent over 100,000 Michiganders within our congregations throughout Metro Detroit. I'm here to say on behalf of every minister that I know, we are sick and tired of burying our children due to gun violence. I'm thinking today of young Ariel Anderson, whose life and death.
Okay, understand something, brother. You've never buried a child due to gun violence. You have buried children due to not having stable homes. You have buried children due to violence surrounding drug trades. You have buried children because they are fucking psychos out there that murdered other kids. You haven't buried a damn person over gun violence because gun violence doesn't exist. Much like smart Democrats, Santa Claus, and the Easter Bunny, and smart blondes. Sorry, blondes. These dudes who jump in on this supposed Christian horse and want to ride in here and tell everybody what's right and wrong. Dude, there's this thing that you think you read that's called the Bible. It's a couple of thick pieces of whatever and a bunch of pages in between it. A lot of those pages in between it are filled with violence and filled with people getting murdered because they did not own the arms to defend themselves. Why my son's back here doing a damn disco. But and don't give me this horse shit about, oh, Christianity can't believe in violence. Jesus was a violent mofo, Jack. He threw the money changers out of the temple, whipping them jokers with a whip. And the only reason that, here's a inside baseball kind of thing for folks, the only reason that the Jews really had a problem with Jesus is because he wasn't the war leader of the time. And the reason he wasn't at that time is, like he tried to explain, it was a season for things. It was a season for him to be a sacrifice. If you read the rest of the Bible, that's where Jesus comes back with the sword and starts cutting people down like they're wheat. You know, work with me here. Actually read some shit and understand what it means. I'm so goddamn sick of people who claim to be Christians and want to lay down like a bunch of fucking wet rags. I'm sorry if I'm going to church these days, which I haven't been in a while, admittedly, but if I go to church, I'm wearing my gun. And if you go to threaten my flock, I'm shooting you in the fucking face. And I will not lose a minute of sleep over your goddamn corpse. Much like the dude in Texas who 357 SIG the dude from about 30 yards away, dead to the tater, one shot. He made 357 SIG sexy again. That is the way you deal with people who want to prey on innocent people. Oh, Christian, nonviolent. No. If you accidentally killed someone back in biblical times, there were places that you could go live to be safe. But if you stayed in town, they would kill you because you took someone else's life. I'm still looking for the point where Christians became pussies. And maybe that's what turns a lot of people off to this shit. And maybe that's what turned a lot of people off to me. But being a Christian, when Jesus said turn the other cheek, he was talking about himself in that position that he had to become a sacrifice for that time. Nowhere in it does it say you have to get your fucking self murdered for the goddamn cause. Let me let this play. I gotta go.
Touched so many lives. She was stolen from us in the MSU shooting. She grew up in Detroit, and she blessed so many lives that the church was filled to capacity for her memorial service. I think of her small, trim silver casket, etched with her years of birth and death, just 19 years. We are tired of burying children. In fact, guns have now become the #1 cause of death for children. What a sick and callous society we have become to allow such a thing.
Okay. I already proved that wrong tonight. For those of you who weren't here earlier, maybe we'll go through it on another stream, but you can go through CDC's website. You can compare causes of death. And we already proved that car accidents for innocent children, those 0 to about 9 years old, far exceed deaths from unintentional firearms accidents. So no, brother, what you need to quit doing is bitching about guns, and you need to start talking about the fathers in your community and telling them they need to raise their goddamn sons so that they don't go out and shoot someone because they don't know what fucking respect is, and they think they got to earn respect at the point of one of these. I wasn't planning on getting that ill, but god damn, this shit gets old.
Understandably, we're focused on school shootings, and that is right and proper in the wake of MSU shooting and Oxford and Uvalde and Parkland. We should not forget all these victims that we are finally honoring with action here in this committee today. I also do want to I don't want to forget the innocent victims of gun violence in Detroit that often go unremarked. Approximately one person per day is murdered in Detroit, almost all of them with a gun. On Sunday, on the east side, just around the corner from Zion Hope Baptist Church where REO's funeral was held, 4 were shot and 2 killed at a gas station. These lives got maybe 3 minutes on the news, and then as a society, we just moved on. The daily drumbeat of gun violence in our cities has got to stop. We can't just live like this is normal. These bills are important because they help stop mass shootings, but also they will help to curb the everyday violence that wrecks Black and brown communities. Safe storage is an excellent example. Too many young people have access to firearms. They can't buy them legally. Where do they get them? They often take them from their parents. 30% of homes in Detroit have children. If the gun in those homes are properly secured to protect the children, that also means that they are less likely to be stolen during a break-in and used for criminal activity. These are simple measures that we can take to reduce the tidal wave of violence. We also need to provide resources to the community to properly implement these measures. I asked this committee to help secure funding to ensure that we can provide gun locks and handgun safes to everyone who needs them. I also asked this committee to secure funding to educate the community in partnership with schools and churches about these new laws when they are passed. People need to know what the law is before they can follow it. I asked this committee to provide resources to properly.
Show of hands from the crowd. How many of you don't understand that murder is a bad thing? Or you don't get to go shoot someone in the face just because they looked at you funny? For all you that didn't raise your hands, let me explain it to you. Just because someone looks at you funny, you don't get to shoot them in the face. It is not okay to just murder somebody just because you felt like it. Now that we've educated the rest of the crowd, that's how fucking ignorant this shit is. You want to stand up there as a so-called minister and make decisions for those who really don't believe the way you do in your state. How many sermons do you preach in your church, minister, where you tell the Black men in your church or the men in your church, period, how about you don't go bang everything with a heartbeat and you raise the children you create? Or how about this, women? Don't go sleep with a piece of shit guy and then think that killing your unborn child is okay. Or the child that you actually do keep due to some fucking freak of nature, you actually raise them instead of hanging out in the goddamn club. Any person who calls themselves a Christian can read the Bible and then say that legislation is going to fix societal issues, should take their Bible, fill it with lead, and then beat themselves in the fucking face until they pass out or they get it into their goddamn head that human nature is human nature and legislation ain't fixing that shit. This guy literally needs to walk into his kitchen, find the heaviest frying pan he's got, and beat himself half to death with it until this point makes sense to him.
Train police departments on the use of extreme risk protection orders and to mandate that they enforce those orders. If the police can't or won't enforce an extreme risk order, then it is not worth the paper it is written on. I also don't need to remind anyone that the relationship between the community and the police in places like Detroit can be complicated. We need the resources and support to work with police departments so that the community feels confident that asking the police to disarm a loved one in crisis will not result in greater harm.
Appreciate your testimony. Thank you so much, Reverend. Any questions from committee members? Also, I know people have, if we can actually refrain from it just sort of slows the hearing down. I know that everyone has a lot that we would like to express, but we want to keep the things moving. So any questions from committee? All right, Paul Stankiewicz from the Michigan Catholic Conference. And then up next, we will go back to Ted Sadler on Zoom if we can get him.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, good afternoon. Paul Stankiewicz with Michigan Catholic Conference. We are the official public policy voice of the Catholic Church in our state. Thank you for the chance to speak today. We support the package of bills before you. I want to spend some time, however, discussing the real issue at hand, which is violence in general in our society. We oppose violence of any kind, and the dignity of all persons must be respected from conception to natural death. We need to begin taking policy actions together with you, our legislature, as a society in a coherent, holistic manner to embrace and foster a culture of life. We need to face facts that gun violence, whether it's homicide or suicide, it's a burden upon our society. It devalues life, and it's degrading our culture. Senators, you have a difficult balancing act before you now, which is admittedly difficult, but the times call upon you to attempt it. A balancing act between arguments that these bills will end violence and that we simply need to enforce current laws. A balancing act between the Second Amendment and the common good. A balancing act between rights and responsibilities. Will this new legislation end all violence? No. Would they have prevented the two recent tragedies here in Michigan? Perhaps. With these in law, will we still have terrible acts of violence that occur? Unfortunately, yes. To paraphrase the Michigan State alma mater, my alma mater, twilight silence has fallen on far too many Michiganders. This is just not about what happened to Spartans last month or the young people at Oxford High School last year. This is what happens on our urban streets, in our small towns, and homes across our state each and every week. We urge the legislature to have a thorough conversation and discussion about violence. We ask you to go beyond these bills. A public information campaign must be launched to make people aware of what is the law now, what these laws would do if they're enacted, and what resources, whether they're current resources or additional resources, are available. As previous speakers have said, these laws are only as effective as the enforcement and the resources that need to come with them. We call for greater attentiveness and awareness to those among us who feel alienated from society or isolated, whether it's in our classrooms, our neighborhoods, or in our homes. To reduce gun violence, we must address the underlying social issues that prompt violence and death in the first place. Michigan Catholic Conference stands ready to have this conversation with you. The bills you are taking up now are simply steps on a journey towards a culture that will value life, recognizes and includes those among us who are isolated, and seeks to bring some degree of safety to our communities. We urge you to take these important steps, support the bills, and continue this important conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Appreciate your your support on these bills. Up next, we have Ted Sadler, who is on Zoom, who we tried to call on earlier. Ted, are you there? Okay.
I am here. Radio check. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. I appreciate the opportunity to weigh in on this subject and the hard work that's gone into trying to improve lives for all Michiganders. One point I need to start with, I believe, is that it's very important that everyone speak the same language and that the words we use are accurate. I would submit that there is no such thing as gun violence. There are violent criminals. And what I find ironic is that every time an evil person commits a crime of violence, particularly in this context, some politicians immediately move to restrict the lives of law-abiding citizens as a result. And that is obviously 180 degrees in the wrong direction. The idea that I might tell my neighbor that he is restricted to the use of one or two or perhaps no tools of force with which he can use to defend himself or his family, or in a larger context, perhaps other people and children in his charge, knowing that evil people observe no such restrictions. For me to tell my neighbor that he is restricted to the number of tools he can choose from, if any, is both illogical and honestly immoral. So further restricting what law-abiding people have an opportunity to own or utilize is, again, ineffective, inefficient, unconstitutional, and I would put forth the idea that it's actually immoral to restrict which tools any individual could use to defend their life or the life of their loved ones, or even an innocent neighbor, if you will, or children in their charge. I might also note the irony of the fact that some politicians who put forth beautiful phraseology regarding protecting children are the same ones that would vote to end a child's life if they have not been born yet, because apparently they don't have any rights. That's about all I had to offer to the conversation. I would suspect that while I only speak for myself and my family, I suspect there are some other American citizens that might find my comments resonate. I appreciate the time and the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? All right, up next, Lawrence Katz, who is also on Zoom.
Yes, good afternoon. I appreciate the committee's giving me an opportunity to make a couple of comments in regard to this package of legislation. First of all, I want to say I have been a member of the State Bar of Michigan and the state number of state committees, as well as a member of the Macomb County Bar Association for more than 50 years. I am also a grandfather of 2 children of the school age who are currently in elementary school. So I understand the nature of the problem and the crisis, if you will, that we're in today. In fact, I myself have been the victim of a felonious assault by a gun, and I personally witnessed the killing of an individual as a result of a gunshot, and that gun could easily have been pointed at me, but it wasn't, thank God. So I would just want you to understand and appreciate the context in which I make my comments. I don't think anyone here on either side would want to see an unconstitutional bill, an unenforceably unconstitutional bill passed through committee and enacted into law. So I just want to restrict my comments to just one aspect of Senate Bill 83. I believe that this proposed legislation is unconstitutionally vague, and the definition of unconstitutionally vague means when people of common intelligence have to guess at the meaning of the language. So this bill is referred to as proposing an extreme risk injunction, and we have the term extreme risk used in subsection 1, section 7, subsection 1. But as it is applied by the legislation in terms of what a judge is supposed to look at, they switch the term extreme to the term significant. So the judge is looking at what's described as a significant risk. The problem is that neither the words extreme or significant really have a clear meaning. The word extreme would mean to a very high degree. The word significant is even more problematic because it essentially, the definition is something important, something noteworthy. So the test for a judge under this legislation to determine whether the extreme act of taking someone's firearm, possibly through force, is not an extreme risk, it's a significant risk. And there really are no standards under the legislation as I've read it to guide a judge in terms of whether to grant or deny such a petition. And when you have the standard of proof being a preponderance of evidence, we're talking about 50.1% versus 49.9%. So what do we have in the legislation to help a judge? There are 13 factors listed. I think those factors make the vagueness even harder because they range all over the place. They don't provide any focus for a judge. And then we have an additional problem, as I read it, that the purpose is to facilitate petitioners to use a state Supreme Court administrator's form. And the judge still has to look at 13 factors. How is the judge going to know what those factors are unless the judge acts as an investigator, a legal researcher, and a prosecutor?
Thank you, Mr. Katz.
We have a
Appreciate your
problem.
testimony.
The judge, what judge is going to deny a petition under the circumstances we have today? So my concern is that abridgments of rights always occur in times of crisis. And this is the time to stop.
We appreciate your testimony
before we do it.
Thank you. And if you have specific language suggestions, you're welcome to, we're always open to receiving them by email. Senator Johnson.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Are you then recommending that there is some legal definition for whatever word is used?
You know, I don't have an alternative set of proposals that might provide more focus for a judge under these circumstances. I don't know that there is one. It's a challenge that I think a committee could take up. But as phrased today, I'm convinced that a court would determine that the language is unconstitutionally vague as it's drafted so far.
Senator Runstead.
So if I have your comments correct, I believe a ex-boyfriend, ex-girlfriend from years ago could write up the form, and the judge has to make a determination if it's a significant risk, which we don't know what that means. With preponderance of evidence, 1/3 more likely that there's a significant risk. And you can lose all of your constitutional rights in this regard, that the judge is going to err on the side of safety. I mean, if they say, take the guns, the judge is on the good side of everything. Now, this person's got to go through who knows how many hoops to ever get the guns back. But if the judge guesses wrong on this significant risk and a preponderance of evidence, the judge is going to have a price to pay. So it sounds like it's just going to be every one of these cases is going to, the way it's written is going to be, boom, take the guns. Do I have a right question?
No, but correct. No petition is going to be denied. Not the way it's phrased. And maybe I would hope nobody intends for that. But, you know, that's going to be the result as the legislation has been drafted. No judge, when presented with this kind of language, is going to deny a petition, would be put himself or herself in that position, not the way the legislation is drafted. I would hope that wouldn't be the intent of the.
I'll tell you what, guys, even though, fuck, man, we still had a while to go in this. I'm gonna end this one here. I gotta go ahead and finish cooking and stuff, and I'm gonna jump in, listen to the Tactical Turkeys. You guys who aren't subscribed to the Tactical Turkeys, do I have them up? Hold on, I'll have you a link here in a second. That should get you to the Tactical Turkeys. They're another cool group to follow, man. Bunch of good guys. Definitely guys that believe in freedom, believe in our right to own firearms, and the right for the government to just eat a big fat one and get out of our face. So, yeah, I'm going to end this one here. You guys stay cool, stay safe. Keep that thing on you at all times. If you guys are up north, man, stay warm. Even down in Alabama, dude, it's been freezing the last couple nights down here, 30, 2 degrees and below. So leave some taps running. Make sure pipes don't freeze. You guys take care of yourself. So, I mean, understand, brothers, when it comes down to it, man, I love every one of you guys. I want you guys to be safe. I want you guys to live long lives. Have kids if you want kids. Have wives if you want wives. But ultimately, you're responsible for yourself. Now, if you had something going on, you needed someone to talk to, get with me, man. We'll talk. I'm by Instagram and just YouTube stuff. I'm easy to get in touch with. Hell, I'll give you my cell number in a hurry. There are a few cats that got it right now that I haven't met in person, but I've talked to, and you can call me about any damn time. You might catch me about half-ass drunk and in a weird mood, but all I'm going to do is tell you bad jokes. But I'm serious, man. You guys be cool. Jump over to the Tactical Turkeys if you're not following in. Bunch of good 2A content. Of course, Dark's going to come on probably right after the turkeys. We'll jump in with Dark. Shoot shit, have a good time with him. Dark's always a good time. I love you guys. Just be careful out there. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your families. Make sure there's not a day goes by you don't tell your loved ones that you love them, even if you're pissed at them. Whether it's, hold on. So I'm sitting here talking to you guys, and I see this run past me. This is not supposed to be out of her cage. How she got out, I'm going to have to figure out. So that's another thing I got to do here, is figure out where old Hammy got out. So anyway, again, guys, love you guys, brothers and sisters. You guys be cool. I'm going to end this one. I'm going to jump in with the turkeys and listen to them and try to chill out. Maybe slow down an aneurysm. So you guys be cool. I'm out.